What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to rank the characters in Crash Team Rumble. Now, this is going to be a little split. It's going to be based off of my personal favorite, who I enjoyed playing the most to the worst, right? But also, I think the importance. Who do you need on a team in this game in order to be successful? Both of those things are going to be weighed in for these rankings, okay? So I just kind of want to make the criteria. It's not necessarily just a personal favorite. It's also who I think every team kind of needs this, and then you'll be better. That has a play in this as well. So let's go through it. Let's start at the worst, and even the worst characters, by the way, they're not like actually horrible, right? They're just the characters I would least play or you probably need on your team the least. Let's start at number 5. Let's work our way to number 1. So number 5, I'm actually going to start with Coco. The thing with this game that I will say right off the bat, boosters I don't really get. So, I mean, that's just a blanket statement. You can judge me. You can leave the dislikes if you wish. But I think a lot of the scorers can really do what the boosters do. Not as well, right? A lot of the boosters have increased mobility. Like, they're the best at getting around, the fastest, the most kind of like nimble. So you need them for like the gem pads and whatnot. They are important. But I don't think they're as important as the other two, right? Like Dingo Dial as a blocker and then the scores, I think you need those. I think you probably could run a team in this game without any boosters and you'd be okay. I truly believe that. Now, of course, they could help, but I just don't think you need them. So if we were to include them, which obviously we will, Coco, for me, is the weaker of the two. So Cortex actually takes a while to unlock in this game. Coco, you get right off the bat. And again, she's good. I'm not saying she's a bad character. Her main two things that I see being used, I'd say the most, is her kind of stomp, her circle move, or her B move if you're playing on Xbox. I think it's pretty powerful. I feel like it's more powerful than like Crash's version of the same thing. I've done it. I've seen a lot of other people do it. And then her wall. The wall is actually very tactical. So I think the wall that she can do, I don't know if you want to call it like her special ability because she can do it kind of all the time, but that can be really, really cool. So people, and including myself, we've put it on like gem pads where you just kind of put up a little barrier where people can't walk into it, right? Otherwise they get zapped. I've actually gotten stunned myself when I've been chasing a Coco, because if you're chasing somebody kind of in a straight line and she puts up the wall and you're too stupid, and like myself, because I am too stupid, and you walk directly into it, well, that, that stops you right there. So I think she's got some benefits, but those are, I'd say, the main two. Obviously, she's got just her normal, attack. And again, she's very, very quick. She's very able to get around the map. That is very good, but overall, I do think she's the weakest character. I'm going to put Cortex at number 4, so it's kind of a battle between him and her. I think he gets an edge for a couple of reasons. Number 1, his dropping the piano thing, the long distance kind of a super attack he has, which again, he can do it all the time. So I don't even know what you want to call it. It's very powerful. Now, the aiming is very difficult and very like finicky with it, right? Because it needs to drop in like a certain location. So to nail it with him, actually that's a reoccurring thing with Cortex. The thing that holds him back is aiming. So even when he's shooting, to lock onto an enemy is actually pretty hard, especially if the enemy like knows what they're doing and is moving around too quickly. Cortex is not very good if you get, say, him versus somebody else in like a 5-foot radius. You're not going to do well. At least in my opinion, you won't do well because he's not really built for close range combat like that, which is fine because he's a booster. He's really not supposed to be. Some of the things that he excels at, I do think, is the gun. So the gun, I know he is a booster, so he's really not even necessarily supposed to be scoring for you, but his gun, if you just hold the shooting button, he'll just shoot any, box that kind of comes in his path, kind of auto-locking on, and then you get the fruit from it. So I actually feel like he's an underrated kind of gatherer. I think he can get things extremely quickly, and although that's not his primary task, I think that kind of gives him an edge over Coco, because he is also still nimble. He's still able to get around. You can still use him for like fast maneuvers, getting in somewhere, then getting out. He can fire from long distance. I actually feel like the guards that people will drop down, I think he's actually pretty okay at fighting them because he can stay away from their shock range and shoot them or drop the piano on them. So I think his long range stuff, at least if the enemy is standing still, is really, really useful. It's really useful. And then his gathering ability, I actually think, is really good, kind of even up there with some scorers. I don't even know if Cortex should be a booster, is I guess what I'm kind of getting at. Number 3, I'm going to say, is Crash. Now, again, a mix of favoritism plus who is like, most ideal to play in a match. I think you need to have at least, and I mean, I actually think you probably need to have at least 2 scores, okay? So each match I'd have probably 2 scores going into it. Now, I think Crash is the second best scorer out of 2, so I guess he's the worst of the 2, but you do need at least 2 of them. You could have 2 of the same ones, right? It doesn't really matter. He is good. He's definitely good. I think his slide ability is really, really good. I think it's a kind of a fast-paced thing, right, to get him from one place to the next. Well, that's one use of it, but obviously you can use it in combat as well. And I don't think people are really like expecting Crash to do that like slide kick at you. Like, it's not really something I've seen too much in battles. So I personally do it. Like, when I'm as Crash, if I'm kind of in the middle of something, I slide to hit them. I think it's pretty darn useful. And then even if you're not doing it in combat, you can obviously do it just to collect boxes or collect the fruit, right? His kind of belly flop, I think, is really powerful. His, just spinning attack is really good. He's an overall solid character. And again, you do need to have some scores on your team. I don't think you necessarily have to have boosters. So that's why, I think Crash gets the advantage for that. He's nothing too special. As we'll get to, the second of the scores, I actually think he's the weaker of the 2, but he's still, I think, worth having on a team. Number 2 is Dingo Dial. Now, this, again, becomes very much, I love playing as Dingo Dial, and I also think he is extremely, extremely important to have on a team. Honestly, early on when I was first playing, like the first couple matches, well, number 1, I think you need to have at least 1 Dingo Dial on your team. I think you have to have at least 1 blocker, right, where you're kind of just camping out either at your base or their base and you're just blocking everybody. You need to have at least 1 of those. Obviously, Dingo Dial is the only one right now. Now, I've gone into matches with myself as Dingo Dial and somebody else, so 2 of us. I think that works a lot. Yet again, I have seen matches, and in fact, the later rounds that I've played of this game, it's just 1. It's either me or it's just somebody else. I kind of let them take over, and I think you at least need 1 because it's just so important. I'll talk obviously about his benefits in a second. I've gone against people that have had 2 Dingo Dials and they wiped the floor with us because they kind of, I guess we'll go into kind of the strengths, they pester you. So they can just kind of camp out, block, and just kind of stand there, and they're extremely good at it, right? Because he is a tank. He deals a lot of damage. He takes a lot of damage. Now, you kind of have to plan out his attacks, right? Because his spins aren't guaranteed to land. If you hold his spin attack, which actually becomes a pretty solid, very strong attack, but it's very hard to like nail it. So it's a little difficult to hit enemies, but I'll tell you, if you have them in a small little area, it's very easy. And especially when you combine him either with the guard, right? So you kind of do like double damage, or you have him with the fridge. So he's constantly being healed as he's taking out enemies. But honestly, it depends on the strategy you want to use with him because he doesn't have to just camp at the enemy team and stay there. That has kind of secured victories for me before. It's definitely helped out. I think that's kind of his primary role, is to just sit there at the enemy, camp and just wait it out and just wait for the enemy to go there and just knock them out. That's 1. But I think actually having him going around the map and like pestering people is actually very powerful. Now, I found this to work the best when there's 2 of them. So either 2 on my team or 2 on their team. If you have 2 Dingo Dials and their primary goal is to go around and just like upset people, I think it works extremely well because his vacuum, or whatever you want to call it, right? His sucking ability, I think, is extremely, extremely powerful. It's got some range to it, right? So you don't have to be right on top. You do have to be close. And it's constantly not just damaging them, but it's taking Wumpa fruit away from them. And I find that if you can get somebody in that range and you can take enough fruit, even if you don't kill them, they tend to almost get discouraged. Like if you're getting them on their way to their base, they'll actually, in most cases for me, they'll pull off. They'll say, well, it's not worth it. I just lost 25 fruit. Why am I going to go deposit it? So I think that's honestly a really big benefit of Dingo Dial. He's not just a tanky. I mean, he is. That's as core. He's there to deal damage and take damage, right? But you don't have to do it just in one location. If you're going around, now I guess the weakness, the huge weakness, is his ability to move. He's very slow. He can't do basic jumps, really. I mean, he can do like the most basic of jumps, but a jump that any of the other 2 classes can do, right? And only they can do, he can't. So they can get away from you. That's definitely one. And that's a pro con of kind of hunting people down. If you're in the map, you're hunting others down. If they're good, they should be able to escape you. Unless you kind of get them cornered again with the vacuum sucking thing. It slows them down. It pulls them in closer to you. They're not really going to get away, right? Unless they're extremely good. So that is one kind of con, though, is if you're running around, you're trying to just pester everybody, it's possible they can get away from you. Whereas if you're just in one location, if you're on their base, they have to come to you eventually, and then you can deal with them then. So I think he's very, very important. But honestly, the character that I think is the most essential, and why I say this is because every match as things start rolling, there was at least one of these characters is Tana. She is such a good character. She's my personal favorite. She's the one I'm the best at, to be honest with you. I think she's, maybe even overpowered because she does everything well. She's quick. She's very nimble. She's, her jumps are very big. Her ability to, so when she does like the grapple hook, she can move a great length very, very quickly. Like, I would say just as fast as anybody else. Talk about Crash's slide. I feel like her grapple can get you further. Maybe it takes a little bit more time, but it can get you further. So she's so good at moving with quickness and with just like versatility. And then as a fighter, I know a scorer, right? So she's supposed to go around collecting fruit and dropping it off. But I would want her against anybody in this game, including Dingo Dial. So if there's ever a Dingo Dial, the ways you take him out is either, double or triple teaming, is using a guard to shock him, running away, right? Like those kind of tactics. Or you have at least one Tana, and then you have other characters, and you go after him. Because her, I believe it's an uppercut ability, right? So her circle ability or her B ability, again, on Xbox, it's so powerful. So she'll go up, and then she'll actually kind of come down if you press it twice. It is such a good move. I find it works so well against pretty much everybody. I'll tell you this, I win a lot of fights as her 1v1, even not 1v1, like if you do 1v2, you can deal a lot of damage. So, again, she's not Dingo Dial. Her goal is not a tank, so she's not supposed to stand there and just do that stuff, I suppose. But she can get into pretty much any situation. She can get the fruit, which is, her primary objective, go back. She's fast. She's good at doing that. But also, if you get in a bind, I trust her. So if you're in a one-on-one fight, like, I would pick her 1,000 times over Cortex, right? Because I talked earlier, Cortex is pretty bad in a one-on-one. If you're like in a 5-foot range, he's kind of screwed, right? Whereas Tana, she's not. She's extremely talented. Crash, he's a little bit more versatile. Even Coco can handle herself. I think Tana is easily the best of that group at fighting, and then she just has all the other traits as well. So let me know in the comments below, guys, what's your ranking? What's your personal favorite character? Again, I fully recognize you need a mix. You can't go into a match with 4 Dingo Dials. You can't go into a match with 4 Tanas, although maybe you could. I think the 4 Tana thing could actually win you match. I know you need mixes. I know that each character is supposed to do a specific thing. I'm kind of lumping them all into the same group, but I do think some are more important than others. Again, this goes based off of my favorites as well. So let me know what you think. Make sure you're subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.